Harvard Divinity School.
The Thunder Perfect Mind, Lectures, Musical and Theatrical Performances, April 9th, 2024.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Charles Stang. I have the privilege to serve as the director of the Center for the Study of World Religions here at Harvard Divinity School. And it is such a pleasure to welcome you to this very special event, one that everyone at the center has been eagerly anticipating and working towards for many months. We have so many people to thank for this evening. First and foremost, the center's staff. Lori Sedgwick is in the back. She's our events coordinator. Lori has worked tirelessly on this effort, and as always, with great enthusiasm and good cheer. Thank you, Lori. I want to single out for special praise and gratitude my colleague to my left, Gosia Skladowska, who is just newly promoted to serve as the center's executive director. Gosia took, yes, well, a round of applause for that. Gosia took on this project with great gusto and coordinated with all the assembled experts, artists, and performers. She and our colleague Isabel Fredericks also designed the program that you have in hand. So thank you, Gosia. I'd also like, okay, I got a second round of applause. Round of applause for Gosia, great. I'd also like to thank our many HDS colleagues who've helped make this event possible. Many thanks to our colleagues in administration, communications, and especially in facilities and operations, who do so much of the invisible work behind these in-person events. And a special word of thanks to our AV colleagues, Bob DeVoe, Robbie Rhodes, and Cuco Daglio, who do so much to make our events visible beyond these walls through recording and live streaming. So perhaps this is a good moment to welcome the roughly 70 of you who are joining remotely via Zoom. We're delighted you're joining us, and we hope that the technology cooperates and that your experience is smooth and seamless. And finally, thank you to my HDS faculty colleagues who kindly relocated their courses yesterday and today so that the musicians could rehearse in this space. The program that you have in hand includes short bios for our scholars, composers, and performers, and the names of the musicians who will be playing the two world premiere pieces. So I will not spend my time reading out those bios because you have them in hand, but I would like to name and welcome and thank them. So first of all, welcome to Shadi Ghaheri, and thank you for bringing the Thunder Perfect Mind alive for us in your performative reading. Thank you to our two esteemed scholars, my dear colleague, Professor Karen King and Dr. Tilde Bak Halvgaard, both of whose work I know and admire greatly. It's an honor to welcome our two composers, Julian Bennett Holmes and Jane Sheldon, and I thank them for providing us the occasion to premiere their two compositions. And finally, I want to thank Anne Harley, who is a visiting scholar at the Center for the Center of the Study of World Religions all this year. Anne, along with Jane, will be singing soprano in both pieces, but Anne's contribution to this evening's program go well beyond her singing. Anne is responsible for commissioning both musical compositions and for organizing this evening's performances. For years, Anne had been planning to come to the center as a visiting scholar for a semester, but the pandemic delayed those plans. When she was finally able to join us, she managed to extend her stay for a full year. That's enabled Anne to organize and offer two related events at the center, or rather here on behalf of the center. In December, some of you joined us for a very similar evening of scholarly talks and world premiere musical performances on the third millennium BC princess, priestess, and poet by the name of Enheduanna, an event we called Voicing the Feminine Divine. Enheduanna was Anne Harley's gift to me. Shamefully, I'd never heard of her, but now I've read all her surviving poetry and a good deal about her life and legacy. That event and tonight's are part of Anne's ongoing project called Voices of the Pearl. In Anne's words, quote, "Voices of the Pearl traces in newly commissioned song cycles the tenuous lineage of women who dared to encounter the unmediated divine. Their efforts span time, religion, nation, and culture. The project commissions, performs, and records musical works from composers across the globe, setting texts by and about female spiritual visionaries and leaders from world traditions throughout history, reclaiming those lost voices and the tradition of female spirituality." Pardon me. Anne is always on the lookout, or perhaps better in this case to say she always has her ear out for the voices of female spiritual visionaries, of texts authored by women who, in her words, dared to encounter the unmediated divine. As I said, Enheduanna was one such woman, and Anne's gift to me. I was gratified to give Anne a gift in return: Thunder Perfect Mind. She'd not heard of it before, and perhaps many of you tonight hadn't heard of it either. It's a remarkable text, largely in the first person feminine singular, a voice who, as you'll soon hear, speaks or sings a litany of startling and paradoxical I am statements, and whose identity, gendered female or male, God or human, principle or person, power or paradox, remains impossible to fix. Thunder Perfect Mind survives in a single 4th century Coptic manuscript, part of a collection of books discovered in Egypt in 1945 near the village of Nag Hammadi, which has lent its name to the collection. I first read this text in graduate school and found it captivating, but confounding. I went on to study closely other texts in the Nag Hammadi library, such as the famous Gospel of Thomas. But Thunder Perfect Mind always haunted me. Who or what is this perfect mind? And why and how does it need to thunder? These are questions for our scholars and our performers to explore, and for you to ponder in your minds, be they perfect or not. But please permit me a brief word on that single word, mind, before we begin. The Coptic here borrows the Greek word nous, which we conventionally translate as mind. But you must banish from your mind our contemporary connotations of mind when you hear this word nous. In the ancient traditions of philosophy and theology from which I believe Thunder Perfect Mind emerges, the nous is not a faculty of procedural or dialectical reason. It is not what we think of as cognition, and it has very little, if anything, to do with your brain. The nous is a transcendental faculty, a capacity we have to perceive, and more importantly, to receive eternal truth. That is to say, to perceive and receive reality. It's something like an immediate transcendental intuition, not the ability to reason in words and in time. Nous absorbs and surpasses all logic. If it has a seat in our body, it is not the head, but the heart. What would it mean for such a faculty to be perfect? And again, how and why might it need to thunder? And is the voice to whom you will soon be introduced, is this the thundering voice of the perfect mind? Or is the voice we hear meant rather to awaken our perfect mind and let it thunder? Or indeed both? Thank you once again to all my colleagues and collaborators, and thank you again for joining us for this very special event. I'd now like to invite my colleague Gosha to say a few words of introduction as well.
Hi, it is my great pleasure to join Professor Stang in welcoming you to tonight's event. Similar to our December event, Enhedwana, Voicing the Feminine Divine, our program for tonight captures in many ways the center's signature approach to studying spirituality and the arts. It allows all of us in the audience to connect with the topic at hand cerebrally through the scholarly talks, but also experientially through our senses, the music, the sounds, and the silences that can be often just as important. It also reflects a long-standing approach within spiritual and religious traditions where the arts are viewed as a window to deeper truths about ourselves, the world around us, and the divine. This is very fitting for an event that is inspired by a text that was not intended to be read, but rather performed and heard, and that captures in its voice, or rather many voices, not a single human experience, but its multitudes. Professor Stang already introduced briefly the performers, the speakers for tonight, but I would like to join my voice in giving special thanks to Anne Harley, our visiting scholar for this year. As Professor Stang mentioned, Anne's work has been phenomenal here, and she has stepped into so many different roles to make the event and the music performance possible today, not only as a performer, but also music commissioner, art director, and producer. And we're so very grateful to you for being with us this year and for taking us on a journey of self-discoveries, which started with your Muscle of Self workshop in the fall, all throughout the event tonight. If you haven't had a chance to participate in Anne's workshop, we just got word today about this workshop being supported by the Provost of Research Office and being integrated into the Harvard Wellness Program in April. So this will become a public event that will be open to the community. So I hope you will have a chance to experience it firsthand. So tonight we invite you to be the hearers, as implored by the very voice of the speaker of the Thunder Perfect Mind. And we invite you to experience this amazing text in a multitude of ways, starting with a theatrical performance. We are delighted to have with us Shadi Ghaheri, who is a choreographer, performer, and theater director. Her newest opera, The Extensionist, just premiered in New York last week, and she took the time away from her performance to join us tonight. Shadi's work often focuses on women's empowerment and equality. Among others, she has run theater and play workshops in Iran for women refugees from Afghanistan. We had a chance to talk about those workshops right earlier today, and she talked about how being part of those workshops and participating in play has been empowering those women to step outside of their social roles and interact in a very different way with their partners and acquaintances. And this makes Shadi's performance and participation particularly relevant to our event and the Thunder Perfect Mind, because this is a text that in many ways subverts gender roles and uses paradoxes to break free from constraints of gender society and gender violence. So please join me in welcoming Shadi onto the stage, and we invite you to enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
I was sent from the power, and I have come to those who think upon me. And I was found among those who seek after me. Look at me, you who have been thinking upon me. And you hearers, hear me. You who have been waiting for me, take me to yourself. And do not pursue me of your vision. And do not let your sound hate me nor your hearing. Do not be ignorant of me at any time or any place. Be on guard. Do not be ignorant. For I am the first and the last. I am the honored and the scorned. I am the harlot and the holy. I am the virgin and the wife. I am the mother and the daughter. I am members of my mother. I am the barren one, and I am the one with many children. I am she whose marriage is multiple, and I am the one who has not got a husband. I am the comforting of my labor pain. I am the bride and the bridegroom. It is my husband who begot me. I am mother to my father and sister to my husband, and he is my offspring. I am the servant of him who prepares me, and I am the Lord of my offspring. It was him who begot me before time, on a day of birth, and he is my offspring in time, and all of my power comes from him. I am the staff of his power in youth, and he is the rod of my old age, and whatever he wills happens. I am the incomprehensible silence, and the much remembered thought. I am the sound of many voices and utterance of many forms. I am the utterance of my name. Why do you hate me, you who love me? And why do you hate those who love me? Why do you confess me and deny me? Why you who deny me confess me? Why do you speak the truth about me and lie about me? Why you who told lies about me speak truth about me? Why you who know me ignore me? And those who know me and those who ignore me come to know me. For I am knowledge and ignorance. I am shame and boldness. I am ashamed and unashamed. I am strength and power. I am war and peace. Give heed to me. I am the disgraced and the exalted one. Give heed to my poverty and wealth. And do not be haughty to me when I am discarded upon the earth, for you shall see me among those who are to come. And do not look upon me on the garbage heap, and go and leave me discarded, for you shall find me in the kingdoms. Do not look upon me when I am discarded among those who are disgraced and in least places, and laugh at me. Do not cast me down among those who are slain in severity, for I am merciful and cruel beyond God. Why do you hate my obedience? And why do you love my self-control in weakness? Why do you forsake me? And why are you afraid of my power? Why do you despise me in my fear and curse my pride? I am she who exists in all fears and boldness and trembling. I am she who is weak, and I am well in pleasure of place. I am foolish, and I am wise. Why do you hate me in your council? Is it because I shall be silenced among those who are silenced, and I shall appear and speak? Why do you hate me, you Greeks? Is it because I'm a non-Greek among non-Greeks? For I am the wisdom of Greeks and gnosis of non-Greeks, and I am the judgment for Greeks and non-Greeks. I am the one whose image is multiple in Egypt, and I am the one who has no image among non-Greeks. I am she who has been hated everywhere. And I am she who has been loved everywhere. I am she who is called life, and you have called death. I am she who is called law, and you have called lawlessness. I am the one you pursue, and I am the one you restrain. I am the one you scatter, and you gather me together. Before me you have been ashamed, and you have been unashamed with me. I am the one who observes no festival, and I am she whose festivals are many. I am godless, and I am she whose God is multiple. I am the one upon whom you have thought and whom you have scorned. I am unlearned, and it is from me they learn. I am she who has been despised and upon whom you think. I am she from whom you have hidden and to whom you are manifest. But whenever you manifest yourself, I myself will hide. And whenever you hide yourself, I myself will be manifest. Those who have senselessly take me, understanding out of pain, receive me out of understanding and pain, receive me to yourself in disgraceful places and contrition, and seize me from the one which are good, even though in disgrace. Out of shame, receive me to yourself in shamelessness. Out of shamelessness and shame, receive me to yourself. Come forward to me, you who know me and you who know my members. Establish the great ones among the small first creatures. Come forward to childhood, and do not despise it because it is little or small. And do not bring apart some greatnesses from smallnesses, for smallnesses are known from greatnesses. Why do you honor me and curse me? You have wounded, and you have had mercy. Do not separate me from the first ones whom you have known. Do not cast anyone out. Do not bring anyone back, brought you back, know him not. What is mine? I know the first one, and those after them know me. I am the gnosis of my seeking and the finding of those who seek after me and the command of those who ask of me. And the power of power by my gnosis, of the angels who have been sent by my logos and the God in their seasons by my command. And it is with me that spirits of all humans exist, and it is within me that women exist. I am she who has been praised and honored, and who has been despised scornfully. I am peace, and it is because of me that war has come to be. I am an alien and a citizen. I am substance, and I am she who has no substance. Those who come into being from my synology are ignorant of me, and those who are in my substance know me. Those who are close to me are ignorant of me, and those who are far away from me have known me. On the day that I am close to you, you are far away from me, and on the day that I am far away from you, I am close to you. I appear, walk in, seal of my, sign of the, I am defeated. I am the one who is called truth and violence. You who honor me, whisper against me. You who are defeated, judge them before they pass their judgment. For the judge and partiality exists within. If you are condemned by this, who does acquit you? And if you are acquitted by him, who will be able to restrain you? For what is outside of you is what is inside of you. For the one who molded you on outside have left impression of it inside of you. And that which you see outside of you, you see inside of you. It is manifest and it is your garment. Hear me, listeners, and be known my utterances, you who know me. I am the hearing that is attainable to everyone and ungraspable utterance. I am the non-speaking mute, and great is my multitude in utterances. Hear me in softness, and learn from me in harshness. I am she who cries out, and I am cast out upon the face of the earth. I make bread, and my mind with it. I am gnosis of my name. I am she who cries out, and I am the one who listens. I am the hearing that is acceptable in every matter, and I am the utterance that is unrestrainable. I am the name of the voice and the voice of the name. I am the sign of the writing and the manifestation of differences. And I, lights and listeners, you, the great power, and will not move the name, the one who created me, but I shall speak his name. Behold, then his utterances and all the writing that have been collected, give heed, then listeners. And you also, angels, and those who have been sent, and the Spirit, who have arisen from the dead. For I am the one who alone exists. And I have no one to judge me. For many are sweet forms that exist in numerous sins and unrestrained acts, a disgraceful passion, a temporal pleasure, which are restrained until they are sober, and then run up to the rest place, and there they will find me, and there they will live, and they will not die again.
But hello, everyone. It is a real pleasure to take part in this event. This is one of my favorite texts ever, and certainly from the Nag Hammadi corpus, which I have spent, now give you some time to my age, but the last over 40 years studying this material. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here. My thanks to Charlie for the invitation and to all who made this possible and are working even now, okay, to get the screen down, and to prepare our wonderful reception and so forth. And thanks to all of you for coming. In 1945, one of the most remarkable texts of ancient spirituality was discovered in Middle Egypt. Utterly distinctive in its literary voice and radical content, it conveys the direct speech of a female, queer, trans, male, divine, outcast, multi-ethnic, old, young, thunderous voice of silence, demanding to be heard. Since its publication, citations of it appeared in Julia Dash's film Daughters of the Dust, and in epigraphs by Toni Morrison in two of her novels, Paradise and Jazz. It has inspired musical compositions, of which we'll delightedly hear more today. It has been tattooed on human limbs, woven into tapestries, and no less, featured in a Prada perfume commercial. So I invite you to join me in exploring this nearly 2,000-year-old writing, and perhaps in discovering your own thunderous, perfect mind. This is the point where we have slide number 1. Or not. I'm afraid, Karen, we're rebooting. Okay. So what I was going to show you, and we'll come back to that, okay, are some actual photographs of the manuscript itself, which I think gives one a sense of its antiquity, its character, its partialness, and so forth. So we'll come back. The manuscript that you're not looking at, okay, is in the Coptic language, okay? But thunder was probably originally composed in Greek. The codex itself, which you're also not looking at, is dated to the 4th century, and therefore the date of composition has to be earlier than that in Greek. But because of the quality of text, which I think you've heard, it's impossible to know. This is not a text that is datable by its content, so to speak. But of the over 50 texts that were discovered in this jar near the village of Nag Hammadi, certainly the most enigmatic and exegetically challenging is this text. Not only has its genre eluded literary classification, but contents have confounded, annoyed, astonished, and delighted its readers, including scholars. The I Am proclamations roused George McCrae, who was a scholar at this institution, to compare it with materials as diverse as the Gospel of John. For those of you may know Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, etc. Jewish wisdom literature, the Isis eretologies from Egypt, and even parallels from India. Tilde Bak Halvgaard, whose book is The Best Thing Yet Written on This Text, okay, and who I am utterly delighted is with us today. And I told her I'm going to have to keep as quiet as I can not to talk about her book, okay, because it's beautiful. But she has brought it into conversation with 2 other Coptic finds, the Trimorphic Protonoia and the Secret Revelation of John, as well as ancient philosophical materials. Bentley Layton, another scholar, concluded that the genre was composite, a composite of Egyptian and Jewish wisdom proclamation, philosophical sermon, and riddle. A riddle, and I think you can hear in this that it asks, it sort of has that kind of quality to it. But a riddle whose solution, he argued, is Eve. So the I in this text is an Eve, which makes sense when you read lines or when you hear lines or see lines performed as we just have, such as, I am she who is called life, and you have called death. Or I am sinless, and the root of sin is from me. Of course, after all, in Genesis, Adam calls Eve life. That's what her name means. But she is, of course, storied as the one who, through childbearing brings death into the world. So in my opinion, Anne Maguire has discerned much of the enigmatic and unraveling character of the text. She suggests that its logic displaces opposites with paradoxes, okay? So opposites are displaced and one has paradoxes. Paradoxes which cross over and nullify boundaries. And in this way, and I quote, the text opens new possibilities for the critique and reinterpretation of such polarities. Critique and interpretation, the identities that they shape, and the values they ascribe to gender in its divine and human manifestations. Let me just take you for a minute. This is Julia Dash and Toni Morrison's, that was quick, okay? So here is Nag Hammadi Codex 6 in its sheepskin cover. Inside the cover, you can see that it was stuffed with blank papyrus for stiffening called cartonnage. When opened to the center of the quire, that is to say the center of the text itself, you can see the manuscript is actually extraordinarily well preserved. Something I'm actually coming to appreciate more and more about age, okay? Here is the first page of Thunder, okay? It's page 13 of the Codex. Notice at the top the over and underlining of the first line, signaling the title, Tebrante Nusentelios, Thunder Perfect Mind. And here is page 18, which I'm showing you just so you can see some of the damaged character, of what's missing at the top and so forth. The final page of our text, 21, I ask you to note the marking at the bottom, which marks the conclusion of this text. So I hope this will give you a visual on what it's like to hold and to work with this text. It's actually relatively largish. It's bigger than your standard piece of normal paper, and is remarkably large, in fact. Back to genre, okay? So we've tripped through some of those things. I myself, along with others, have tended to think of this work as a collection of prophetic oracles. We know that there were oracles of at least some women prophets that were collected and written down, among them Philomene, Prisca and Quintilla, who were Montanist prophets, and the Sibyls, both Greek and Jewish, whose oracles were collected. The 2nd century theologian and polemicist Tertullian notes that a person called Apelles followed a woman prophet named Philomene, and, quote, having been imposed upon by her vigorous spirit, he committed to writing the revelations which he had learned of her, unquote. Like them, I think our text might also evince an ecstatic state of mind. And there is a composition setting this piece to harp, which does that, which tries to I've come from the power, and takes on this kind of voicing that one might imagine would be ecstatic in state. But I think you might well ask, why classify? This is a text that itself would seem to resist such classification. And yet I think classification as oracular literature fits with its paradoxical mode. Oracles were understood to require interpretation, to be messages with truth, but truth that required careful consideration and unraveling, feeling as well as thinking. Rather than dismiss the text, as some have, as irrational or immoral, might thinking of it as oracular be an invitation to a different kind of listening? The opening lines, in fact, introduce the speaker and her relation to those who listen. You've already heard these. I'm going to keep them up on the screen. She was sent forth, and she has come. She is for those who reflect, those who seek, those who are waiting for her. She commands hearers to take her to herself. She commands hearers to speak and to listen, to know and not be ignorant. And yet, okay, she also commands to deny her and to confess her, to tell the truth, but also to lie. She is ignorance and knowledge. So why goad readers this way, okay? To what effect? Thunder may have been used, some have suggested, in a liturgical setting, one in which participants themselves recited the poem, taking on themselves the eye of the text, such that the boundary between the divine voice and the humans is dissolved, those who read, who speak the text. I think with potentially very powerful effects. Some of you may try this at home, okay? The thunder's insistent, demanding voice acknowledges and it authorizes selves who are shaped in the gaze of multiple audiences. All those voices that tell us who we are, or who we were, or who we ought to be, or who we shouldn't be, but might have been, or yet become. These voices are coming from within, as well as from the outside. By reciting the oracles of this woman prophet, just as ancient readers did, I think her voice becomes our voice. We are incited to name our own paradoxes, transgressions, our complexities, uncertainties, our strengths and frailties, to acknowledge the workings of power and the workings of powerlessness, our own complicities, our own complacencies, struggles and hopes, inadequacies and despairs. In my classes, we sometimes take a copy of this, a paper copy of the text. Remember those? Okay, anyway, and we cut them, I cut them into stanzas and distribute them around the room, okay? So that when people read the lines, you hear them coming from all corners of the room, from everywhere, from each direction, in diverse tones and in diverse melodies of voice and diverse accents, okay? And I invite everyone, and that could be you if you choose, to take up a pen and to write or speak your own lines, leaning perhaps into paradoxes of your own lives, your powers and vulnerabilities in these our troubled times. People have sometimes found this exercise to be enormously moving, a real exploration for themselves, of their times, and of themselves. Thunder invites, but her voice also commands. Let's see, is this what I wanted? Yes, no, this is what I want. Thunder invites, but her voice also commands. Give heed, don't be haughty. The divine thunder can be found among the poor and the wealthy. It is in giving up pride that she is found. And then what? If she is perceived on the garbage heap, if you look out on the garbage heap and you see this divine thunder, we're not just to leave her there thrown out. We are commanded not to leave her discarded. What might that be? Repeatedly, thunder uses what appear to be paradoxes to look beyond oppositional dualities towards encompassing and acceptance, taking to task and taking to heart some of the most basic categories of ancient and modern analogical dualism. Look at this list, okay? Life and death, law and lawlessness, to be unlearned and a teacher, to be war and peace. You have wounded and you have had mercy. To be descent and coming down, and they come up to me. To be judgment and acquittal. The inside and the outside, foolishness and wisdom, strength and fear. So, is this a collapse, okay? Is it collapsing everything? What does that mean? Does it mean that everything is allowed then? Everything is good, everything's okay? Thunder doesn't say that, okay? She says, reflect and seek. The oracles of Thunder Mind challenge the fixity and the stability of every kind of marker. It does this not through negative theology, that is to say by saying, I am not this and I'm not that, but by employing the I am this and I am that, by employing these markers as fundamental signifiers of divine being and presence. Time and age, I'm the first and the last, come forward to childhood, okay? Staff of the power in his youth, he's the rod of my old age. Of gender and social roles, bride and bridegroom, my husband begot me, wife and virgin, whore and holy one. Ethnic status, I'm an alien and a citizen. Why have you hated me, Greeks? Because I'm a barbarian? Okay. But there's wisdom of the Greeks and there's knowledge of the barbarians. So I'm judgment for both, okay? Honor and moral status. This list is, to me, so powerful to read. To be shame and boldness, to be unashamed and shamed, disgraced, exalted. The one who is honored and praised and despised scornfully. Receive me to yourselves in shamelessness. Hold my members accountable for themselves. Economic status, wealth and poverty, the divine and the human. This is so interesting. It is with me that the spirits of all humans exist. It is within me that women exist. The effect, I think, of all this is to locate the voice of thunder everywhere and in everything. Rather than restrict the divine presence merely to what is good, what's exalted, what's honorable, Thunder Perfect Mind locates the divine as well in that which are hegemonically marked as their opposites, in sin, in degradation, and dishonor. The voice does not make everything okay. It challenges how one thinks and how one perceives. It is a challenge to heart and to mind, to heart-mind. It is ultimately about transformation and transcendence. I suspect in this room, we react variously to this kind of talk. Perhaps it feels liberating or congratulatory. Perhaps it's unsettling and disorienting. Perhaps one simply objects or vociferously objects to demolishing guidelines and safeguards, values and aspirations that are already under siege. I am war and I am peace. You have wounded and you have mercy. What does radical acceptance look like in troubled times? What does radical acceptance look like in troubled times? A particular emphasis in Thunder is its attention to sound, to speech and listening, to silence. The hearing which is attainable, the ungraspable utterance, a non-speaking mute who speaks multiply, who cries out, who listens. The hearing that's acceptable in every matter, the utterance that can't be restrained. The name of the voice of the name. Thunder booms with a voice that is powerfully compelling and impossible to fix and control. Reflexive in its own very reflection on its own effectiveness and modality as thunder and silence. To knowledge of the linguistic manifestations in Thunder Perfect Mind, I now leave you to the reflections of Tilde Bak Halvgaard. In seeking and listening and taking to yourselves, I leave you to the voices and sounds of our musicians in the compositions of Julian, Bennett, Holmes, and Jane Sheldon with Anne Dorothy Harley. And I, like you, I expect, can hardly wait to listen and hopefully to hear.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to have you all here. And I have been asked to amuse you while we get set up for the music. About a year ago, Anne Harley called me with a very interesting idea. She wanted to put together a whole concert of music and speaking based on this text, this very mysterious, bizarre, ancient, and wonderful text that she told me was written about 1600 years ago and dug up out of the desert by an Egyptian farmer in 1945, as you have recently heard. And the mysterious nature of this text, the way it's almost impossible to decipher or relate to anything modern, very easily inspired the music you are about to hear. The only problem was I had to learn how to type in Coptic, which was a skill I never thought I would have, but I now do. So besides Anne Harley, I could not have done this without Karen King, who helped me pull apart the text into pieces and figure out how I could use it in a piece of music. And besides Anne and Karen, this whole thing couldn't have happened without Gosha and Lori and everyone else at the Center for the Study of World Religions. So thanks to all of you, and of course, thanks to the musicians, I could not have a better team to premiere this piece of music. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the invitation to this event. I'm very delighted and very honored to join you in celebrating this extraordinary text, which is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful writings that we have from antiquity. This year, it's actually been 20 years since I gave my first paper on the Thunder Perfect Mind. Professor King was attending. I was writing my master's thesis. Later, I did my PhD also on the Thunder Perfect Mind. And it has continued to be at the core of my research ever since. It is one of those texts that keeps following you in a very insisting way, but a very nice way indeed. It gets under your skin, so to speak. Nevertheless, in spite of years of research, I have a feeling that I still don't really get it. However, I shall share some of my ideas for understanding this enigmatic poem. As we have heard, in the Thunder Perfect Mind, we are met by a revealer figure who proclaims to be sent forth from a power and who presents herself in so-called I am sayings. I am compassionate and I am cruel, I am strength and I am fear. We encounter this revelatory style in other ancient texts too, like the Aretologies by the Hellenistic Egyptian goddess Isis, or like Jesus in the Gospel of John, who proclaims, I am the light of the world. However, whereas both Isis and Jesus present themselves in positive terms, the revealer in the Thunder Perfect Mind identifies with opposites, both strength and fear, war and peace, and as such, she invites us, the readers or hearers, to find her. These opposite concepts represent different aspects of human life: family relations, law and lawlessness, love and hate, poverty and wealth, etc. Concepts that to us are opposites, yet in the Thunder Perfect Mind, they are presented as contained in one single divine being, and thus turning them into paradoxes. For this reason, one of the main topics which has engaged scholars is the question about her identity. Who is she? What does it mean that she paradoxically comprises opposites? And how are the readers supposed to find her when she appears so contradictorily? I agree with scholars like Anne Maguire and Paulibert Poirier that the paradoxes signify the universality or perhaps the transcendence of the revealer. She comprises both poverty and wealth, both war and peace. And so on the one hand, she is the pantheistic everything, and on the other, she almost reaches beyond any human conception of the physical world. In comprising opposites, she breaks down our usual conception of incompatible dualities, inviting for reinterpretations of, for instance, different but overlapping roles of women. This play with language is so extensive that we as readers are puzzled to a degree where our usual sense of meaning is dissolved. It almost seems like we can no longer trust our language to be precise enough to capture the essence of the revealer. Our language simply becomes insufficient. The semantic teasing of the poem reaches a climax when the revealer identifies with language itself. 3 passages in the Thunder Perfect Mind stand out thematically from the rest by a clustering of terms that are associated with theoretical language speculation in ancient philosophy. In these passages, the revealer not only plays with language, now she is language. In my research, I call these the linguistic passages, and I have focused on them as a key to understanding the thunder. I will talk about 2 of these passages, the first and the last. The first passage is located in the beginning of the text, and my own translation of the Coptic reads like this. I am the silence that is incomprehensible, and the thought whose remembrance is great. I am the voice whose sound is manifold, and the word whose form is manifold. I am the utterance of my name. Here, she identifies with a sequence of linguistic terms proclaiming to be silence. Oops, sorry. There you go. Sorry. Yeah, right. Silence, thought, sound, voice, word, utterance, and name. I included both sound and name here, even though she does not identify directly with them in this passage, but she will later. A close look at this sequence shows that it's also a progression, a development from something as inarticulate as silence or a thought to its opposite, very articulate, sounding voice, word, and utterance. In ancient philosophy of language, more specifically in Stoicism, we find a striking parallel. In the Stoic theory on voice, we encounter a description of the process of a verbal expression, which to a high degree parallels the sequence of linguistic terms in the Thunder Perfect Mind. The Stoic sequence appears in the account by Diogenes Laertius on the Stoic theory on voice and may be visualized as this. This theory answers fundamental questions like, what happens when we say something? Or how does a thought become a logic sentence? Note here that an utterance is described as being issued from within thought. This means that according to the Stoics, we actually think before we speak, or at least in theory. The first thing that comes out of this thought is what I prefer to call a sound voice, since according to the Stoics, it is inarticulate and thus may be a mere noise. The sound then becomes speech, which is articulate, but not necessarily intelligible. The final level of the utterance is when the sound becomes articulate and intelligible in the rational discourse, in the logos. Thus, to the Stoics, the logos is at the highest semantic level of a verbal expression. This is where we really get what is being said. So, the Stoic sequence of a verbal expression shows us how a thought, through various semantic steps, becomes more and more perceptible. The similarities between the Stoic sequence and the linguistic proclamations in the Thunder Perfect Mind are apparent. In both sequences, thought, sound, voice, and word represent the core of the progression. And this cluster of linguistic terms indicates a progression or a movement beginning from within thought over the inarticulate sound towards the articulate logos. If we recall that the revealer in Thunder was sent forth from the power, we must consider her manifestation as a descent into the world. And in this particular linguistic passage, she descends linguistically. When read against the background of the Stoic sequence of a verbal expression, her descent may be seen as a progression from inarticulate sound to the fully articulate and perfectly intelligible rational discourse in the logos. As the Stoic utterance, the revealer in the Thunder Perfect Mind becomes more and more perceptible. However, I do not argue that the Thunder Perfect Mind uses the Stoic sequence on a one-to-one scale, but rather that the philosophy of language lies as an underlying matrix in the Thunder. Moreover, the Stoic sequence is directed towards the logos, that is, rational discourse, as the ultimate goal of a verbal expression. Is the Thunder Perfect Mind an example of rational discourse? Not exactly. In fact, quite the opposite. Therefore, I suggest that Thunder, at least semantically, turns this sequence upside down. For in thunder, the highest semantic level is not in the logic logos, but at the opposite end of the scale. Meaning is found within silence. How then are the readers supposed to find the revealer as they are invited to? If we understand the manifestation of the revealer as a descent which develops from silence, it appears that the readers must move upwards to find her. They must make an ascent, beginning from the logos and ending in silence. So the silence becomes the actual goal in this Nag Hammadi text, and the logos simply the first step on the way towards it. She is the silence that is incomprehensible, by logic, yes. What would the Stoics say to all this? I actually don't think they would be very impressed. They were all about the logic, and the thunder perfect mind is somewhat beyond logic, perhaps even approaching a collapse of logic. The last linguistic passage is found towards the end of the poem and offers some other linguistic features. It reads, I am the hearing that is receivable in everything. I am the speech that cannot be grasped. I am the name of the voice and the voice of the name. I am the sign of the writing and the manifestation of the division. Here we encounter the notion of the name, which plays a central role in thunder, in that the revealer 3 times hints at her name without actually revealing it. Thus she states, I am the utterance of my name in the first passage. Later on, I am the knowledge of my name. And here, I am the name of the voice and the voice of the name. It has been discussed whether thunder, the Greek bronte, which is found in the title of the text, is the actual name of the revealer. We can't be sure, of course, but I find it more likely that thunder is the sound of her name when it is uttered in this sensible world. A rumbling of thunder is heard as she descends. We might ask, what is in fact a name? Plato offers a theory on the dialogue, the Cratylus, where we find a philosophical discussion on the correctness of names. In this, the famous philosopher Socrates concludes that names, that is what we would today call nouns or words, simply names of things, they are from the outset naturally attached to the things they name, although names do not sufficiently describe the very essence of things. Therefore, one must look at the thing itself in order to grasp its true nature. If we apply this theory to the name of the revealer in thunder, it makes sense that her actual name is never revealed. For it is not through her divine name that the readers of the text may come to know her. In order to know her, they will have to give heed to her, to listen carefully to her message and not seek for her name. The Platonic notion of the name also plays a role with regard to the message of the female revealer. What she reveals seems paradoxical at first glance, but on the other hand, what she reveals is, to a high degree, names. That is, names of things, concepts, human relations, and qualities. She reveals them in pairs of opposites, since this is how human rational language conceptualizes the world. But is she in fact at the same time telling the readers that these concepts are nothing but mere concepts? That they do not reflect the true nature of things, and that in order to grasp the essence of reality, one must abandon rational language? I believe so. She reveals language by being language, and thus she dissolves it. So what is the sound of silence, besides the old-time classic by Simon and Garfunkel? It is an audible revelation of the divine silence, a linguistic manifestation as a disturbance of our conception of language, and therefore our perception of reality. Is thunder then a 2nd century Tower of Babel myth? No, I don't think so, because as opposed to the Tower of Babel myth in the Hebrew Bible, the thunder goddess invites her heroes and readers to find her in silence beyond human language. In my reading of the Thunder Perfect Mind, I don't see it as nonsense. I see it as a beautiful piece of language philosophical poetry, which teaches its readers about the building blocks of language. At the same time, it points beyond language and offers redemption through thunder, which is the sound of silence. So let's get shaken by the thunder of the perfect mind. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank everyone at the Center for the Study of World Religions for having me, in particular Charles, Gosha, and Laurie for their generosity. I felt very warmly welcomed at the Center by its staff and all the affiliates. I also want to thank Anne Harley. I am the composer of the next piece, and it is thanks to her that the piece is written at all. These musical works that you're hearing tonight become part of Voices of the Pearl, the project you've heard about, in which Anne commissions musical settings of mystical texts offering feminine perspectives, as complicated as we're discovering those perspectives are. I didn't know anything about Thunder Perfect Mind when I was invited onto this project. I'd never heard of it. And it is a wonderful discovery that will keep unfolding for me musically, I am sure. For this piece today, I just wanted to draw your attention to some of the things happening in the music and explain why certain sounds are present, given the text. So the first thing to note is I wanted to foreground the language. So Anne and I are delivering it in a very declarative fashion, mostly in chant. Sometimes in a very unified chant, and at other times in some disjunction, slightly out of time with each other. And the reason for this is that the text itself is emerging from a speaker who's always holding two aspects of herself, at least two, in dynamic presence. Another thing that you might notice is what Gary, our wonderful bass clarinetist, is doing. We're most accustomed to hearing clarinets play single pitches in sequence, play melodies. But here, Gary's role today is primarily textural. He's almost always playing multiphonics, in which the clarinet's tone is split into multiple pitches present at once. They have a kind of inherent instability and fragility, bringing constant activity to the sound as each pitch comes in and out of presence. And this seemed another way to sonically explore the multiplicity embodied by the speaker of Thunder Perfect Mind. The last thing that I will invite you to notice is that when Anne and I are singing together, especially when we have pitches that are close together and we're singing loudly, this can be intense to hear by design. And you can sometimes feel in your head as you're listening a sort of, that your head is overly full of sound. What you're noticing there is the play of combination tones. And without delivering a lecture on psychoacoustics, I will just say briefly what that is. So these are psychoacoustic phenomena that are produced in your own perception when two pitches, two sound frequencies, are in certain kinds of relationships. You hear two pitches, but perception detects a third, and it feels very mysterious. It feels like there's more sound than you can really account for. Now, musicians, we sometimes use computer-generated imaging to kind of give us information about the sounds we're sending out into the air. And something to note about these extra pitches that's maybe obvious, but worth noting, is they don't show up on the images that musicians use to examine the sounds we're making. I draw your attention to this because, to me, it's a very attractive sonic metaphor for encounters with the divine, In both cases, we have an experience that is utterly real for the experiencer, but its source feels very mysterious, and it evades measurement or capture by certain of the standard tools that we presently use to sort the real from the illusory. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This is a fantastic event, and I'm so grateful for everyone who put every effort in to make this a wonderful evening for everyone. A lot of people talk nowadays about the benefits of multi or inter or transdisciplinary methodologies these days, and I'm told that in religious studies in particular, there is a kind of trend in which scholars are called upon to practice this, but how many of us have experienced it enacted as we have tonight? This is, in fact, what we all have just experienced. Tonight's program, in which the scholarly interpretation of the texts and experience of musical performance of the settings of that text are presented side by side, is for me really a dream come true. And it's very much thanks to the Center for the Study of World Religions and the initiative, the Transcendence and Transformation Initiative, that tonight's project took root. The arc is long and probably longer than you think. Jane and I have known each other for
I don't even want to know, maybe 15 or 20 years. And she was actually on the first cycle that I commissioned and recorded with her. So thank you, Jane, for being a wonderful friend for so many years in the musical and spiritual. This particular project began almost 2 years ago when director Charles Stang suggested that Thunder Perfect Mind might well fit into the pieces that I incubate in my commissioning project, and with the programming here at the center. And indeed, it has been a wonderful way to invite and convene many scholars from various places and composers from various disciplines here to this room tonight. Since then, since Charles Stang told me about this amazing text, many conversations with composers Julian Bennett Holmes and Jane Sheldon, and the scholars Karen King, Lydia Bremer McCollum, Nicola Denzi Lewis, and Fabian Muller have been indispensable to the compositional process and to our performance tonight. So if we got it right with the live performance of these world premieres, everyone will have experienced something transformational. Because what we have just heard together sounds arranged for us in a kind of guided group meditation, not via the compressed signal coming through individuals' earbuds, which is, for many of us, the predominant experience of music these days. But here tonight, the sounds came direct to you, to your bodies, from other resonating bodies, rearranging your inner organs as well as your inner ears. What a valuable and indeed rare experience it is to be able to have live music like this. What's more, the arc of the project is not over. It aims, I hope, far into the future. The incubation and performance of these pieces here has made it possible, and even likely, that these works will now go and do their work in other venues and in recorded form after our recording sessions this week. This will, I hope, spur new attention to the poetry of Thunder Perfect Mind, a text that surely deserves to be better known, a text that many may actually need to hear. Before letting you go, I just want to thank some very important people without whom this event would not have happened. First of all, to Charles Stang for bringing Thunder Perfect Mind to my attention in the first place, and with him, Gosia Skłodowska and Lori Sedgwick for supporting and materializing our vision. Thank you, in all caps, as they say. Something very special is happening at the Center for the Study of World Religions because of these people. Likewise, I want to say a big Tisha Pemot and Tetin, and wait a minute, and Tentinu, which I hope is thank you in Coptic, to our dedicated scholars and Coptic advisors, Karen King, Tilde Bak Halvgaard, Lydia Bremer McCollum, and Nicola Denzi Lewis. It has been an honor to work with you. To our composers, Jane Sheldon and Julian Bennett Holmes, and the wonderful musicians who have worked to get the sounds exactly right tonight, thank you, also in all caps, for your unfailing commitment to bringing beautiful new work into the world and your patience with this midwife. Thanks also to Shadi Ghaheri, our first performer, who, through her art, introduced new interpretations of Thunder Perfect Mind to us. And now I turn the process back over to you all, where hopefully over a celery stick or a glass of wine, at the wonderful reception that the staff of the CSWR have arranged for us, transformation and transcendence can continue.
Sponsor, Center for the Study of World Religions.
Copyright 2024, the President and Fellows of Harvard College.